Hi, this is John from MJG Education. Today we're going to talk about the PTE academic writing part, summarize written text. This presentation will cover test instructions, test procedure, things you should know to make you more test wise, the compound sentence, the noun clause, the adjective clause, some explanations surrounding the procedure, examples with possible answers, and a conclusion. This is what you will be asked to do on the test. Read the passage below and summarize it using one sentence. Type your response in the box at the bottom of the screen. You will have 10 minutes to finish this task. Please note your response will be judged on the quality of your writing and on how well your response presents the key points of the passage. Here are some things you should be able to do as a sort of pre-procedure. You should be able to paraphrase. Okay, don't copy more than 3 words, they say for this. Link your sentences. Because you have to write one sentence, the ideal is to write a compound sentence first. So link your sentences as compound sentences using conjunctions. Now, 3 ways to do this, of course. You can use coordinating conjunctions. People know the acronym FANBOYS, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or, so. You can use conjunctive adverbs, which are just substitutes for the functions of the coordinating conjunctions. But notice the punctuation. Semicolon and then a comma that follows. Or the third way is you can join 2 independent clauses with just a semicolon. Noun clauses are quite useful too. You can use any of these sorts of subordinate conjunctions, that, how, where, when, who, why, what, after a transitive verb. You don't necessarily have to use a noun clause either. Adjective clauses, using which with commas, or that or which with no commas. Really, we're talking about identifying and non-identifying clauses. With commas would be a non-identifying adjective clause. Without commas would be an identifying adjective clause. Those will be explained along the way. When we talk about a compound sentence, this is the form on the right side here. An independent clause, comma, plus a conjunction, plus your second independent clause. That's usually the length, okay? But with summarized written text, sometimes you'll be asked to, you're going to have to extend it to get it to 30 words. So usually when you write a compound sentence, it comes to about 23, 24 words, maybe 21 words, who knows, but you're going to have to add an adjective clause to try and bump it up around 30, 29, 30, 31 words. Try and get over 30 words, okay? Usually the first one is the most common, and it's usually comma and. I make it sound difficult with all this grammar, but it's not that difficult. Actually, I'm going to show you the easiest possible way to nail this and get a 90. This is the procedure you should try. Skim the passage and notice the cause and effect relationship. With Pearson, if you realize with the essay, you have all those different types of essay, different styles of writing. The only style that they don't come across in the essay part is cause and effect essays. And so they utilize cause and effect here with summarized written text. And so what it is that you have to know, makes it very easy, is when you read your text, you just have to decide, does this text go from the cause to the effect, or from the effect to the cause? Okay. Use grammar you are confident with. Do not include your own ideas. Do not include any background information. You're just supposed to take the text that's in front of you on the screen, and then you have to summarize it. Okay. So you're going to reduce it massively. So you can only choose a couple of points to talk about. You're going to just make a compound sentence right off the bat and then add to it. The procedure is this. Discover the pattern. Cause to effect, effect to cause. Write a compound sentence, and then you have to add something to it. I always say an adjective clause, but you can add maybe a phrase to try and get it over 30 words. That's what's going on. Check the content. Is the meaning the same? Sometimes this gets confused when you're writing. Don't do that. Make sure you're just logically putting those sentences in order. The length, is your response between 30 and 40 words? Is your response only one sentence? And so that's the importance. What they're also testing you here, obviously, is do you know your sentence structure, which will show up in the essay as well. But here you have to know how to write a compound sentence. This is the easiest way to do it, right? So is your response only one sentence? Check your sentence structure, spelling, and punctuation. Do not copy more than 3 words in a row from the text. They don't want you that sense of plagiarism. They do not want that at all. And 2 words, like you can always copy the topic. Don't worry about that. The subject, whatever it is, you can copy that directly. But it's all the formulations of the sentences afterwards they don't want you copying anything from that. Because it's an algorithm, you have to be aware of that. That algorithm can find if you're copying 4 words, that's it. It's got you. So be careful. Here are some things you should know about this task to make you a little more test-wise. There will be 2 or 3 of these on the test. So you get 2 or 3 summarized written texts. If you get 2, then it's possible that you'll have 2 essays. But up to about a year and a half ago, they cut it down to usually 1 essay. If you get 3 summarized written text, you're guaranteed to only have 1 essay. There's a 10-minute timer that counts down on your screen. So you have 10 minutes to do this. Lots of time. I tell my students that, you can do this in about 5 or 6 minutes. So you should have a 4-minute rest if you follow the procedure I give you here. The reading passage can be up to as many as 300 words. Scoring. Summarized written text affects both your reading and writing score. Marking is based on form, content, grammar, and vocabulary. You should know what a compound sentence is. Again, there's 3 ways to join 2 or more independent clauses. They are here, but you're going to have to study this stuff. It's so important that you know this for this task on this exam. So what follows from this slide is the noun clause, and then I go through the adjective clause. Just a quick summary so you can brush up on it. By all means, you can study outside of what I'm showing you here. But after we go through the noun clause and the adjective clause, I'll go right back into the procedure and show you exactly what I mean, how to handle summarized written text. This presentation is on the noun clause in the object position. So there are a couple of things you have to understand about a noun clause, basically about verbs, okay? If I say to you, I run, you understand what I mean because this is a complete thought. A subject and a verb and a period. I run. It's also considered a sentence as it is a complete thought. However, this is an example of an intransitive verb. And the idea you're supposed to remember here is that it's a complete thought. I run. You don't have to add anything to this to make the person understand what you're saying. However, if you say I like, subject and verb, the same form, you will not know what I like because this is not a complete thought. Like is considered a transitive verb here, so something has to be added to it to complete the thought. And that's the problem with a transitive verb. You have to recognize it's a transitive verb, and then there's different ways you can complete that thought. So we have to add a direct object in most cases to complete the thought. So in this example, we say I like, and then you have to give it a direct object. Now, what you have to understand about English grammar is that you don't have to use one word as the direct object. As you can see, you can create what we call a noun clause in the object position. I think in this first example is the subject and the verb. You have a subordinate conjunction here, that, and then you just add a clause. So to create a noun clause, what follows the transitive verb is a subordinate conjunction, and then you add your clause to it. So, as I said, it's a transitive verb. In this case, the verb would be think. A subordinate conjunction, that, in this case, and a clause, which includes, a clause has to have a subject and a verb, and then whichever way you want to complete it, or use a direct object. That's yours. In here, it's a direct object, subject, verb, and direct object. The earth is flat. Okay, that's the best color coordination I can do there for you. But simply, that's the noun clause in the object position, and we'll start to show you now different ways to use it. Adjective clauses usually start with a relative pronoun, and the relative pronoun is usually placed right beside the noun it modifies. Sometimes, however, you will get a prepositional phrase maybe in between the noun it modifies and the relative pronoun. Relative pronouns, there they are, they're listed there. Who and whom refer to a person. We'll deal with whom a little later on. That refers to a person or a thing. Which always refers to a thing. When and where are adverbs, and they're used as relative pronouns for time and place respectively. And whose always refers to possession. Okay, so what's the difference between an identifying or a non-identifying adjective clause? Different grammars from England or America, they use different terms. So I use identifying and non-identifying. It makes sense to me. Restricted and non-restricted mean exactly the same thing. So you just choose one and stick with it. So here we have 2 relative clauses or adjective clauses that are identical. Who lives down the street? Okay. In the first sentence, it says the boy who lives down the street is happy. Now, notice there's no commas around the adjective clause who lives down the street. Now, the reason why is because the boy is a very general term. Like there's 4.5 billion boys on the planet right now. So the adjective clause here, who lives down the street, helps you identify the boy. So it's considered, as it says in parentheses there, essential information. And it's essential because it helps identify the boy. So you never put commas around these adjective clauses because it helps you identify your subject. Okay, and it's usually the case every time. In the second sentence, Mark, comma, who lives down the street, comma, is happy. The adjective clause here, who lives down the street, is considered extra information or extraneous because the subject has been identified as Mark. So this is called a non-identifying clause because Mark has already been identified. So in this case, you put commas around your relative clause. So in the second sentence, Mark, who lives down the street, is happy. The only thing that's important in this sentence is Mark is happy. The other part, the relative clause, the adjective clause, is just extra information. So that's basically it. The difference between the two clauses, or how you use the commas, depends on your subject. If it's a very general subject, you're probably going to need an identifying adjective clause. If the subject has been defined well enough that you understand it, you use commas around your adjective clause. Sometimes there's some confusion between that and which. So I'll try and clarify some of that. In the first sentence here, it says the man who manages the bank arrived yesterday. Okay, the adjective clause here is non-identifying. You could use that or who, right? The man who manages the bank arrived yesterday. Both are correct, but when we move on and we look at the next sentence here, and it says the book that is on the table is black. There's another non-identifying adjective clause, okay? You could also use which here because it's a thing. The book which is on the table is black. That's fine. In the next sentence here, though, notice the train to St. Louis, comma, which is on the track now, comma, has stopped. This is your adjective clause here, and it's non-identifying. In British grammar, they will put a comma in front of which for a non-identifying adjective clause, and they will use which again for the identifying adjective clause. So they'll use which in both cases for the identifying and the non-identifying adjective clause. However, in American grammar, you never put a comma in front of that. You always use which. Okay, so that's the big difference there. You'll never see a comma and then that in American grammar, but you will see it. You'll know it's a British text immediately because they always put a comma in front of which with a non-identifying adjective clause. It's important sometimes to know the difference. My recommendation when you're writing, let's say, an IELTS exam anywhere in the world, the closer you are to England, use British forms of grammar. If you're in North America, you can use the American forms. With who and whom, always remember that whom is always in the object position, okay? Whereas who is always in the subject position of the clause, right? So, for example, here, the man who opened the store has left the building. The adjective clause, who opened the store, who is the subject, and of course opened is the verb. Now, when you use whom, you always have a subject that follows whom, and that's what they mean by the object position. So here, the man whom as the object, we subject, fired last week. Okay, that would be your adjective clause, but just remember that following whom, in most cases, you have a subject that follows. This is just another comment I'd like to make about the differences between American and British grammar. This deals with commas in a series. In the first sentence, it says, I like American fast food, comma, including, here we go with the list, the commas in a series, pizza, comma, hot dogs, red comma, and tacos. Now, when you list more than 3 items in a series, you're going to use comma, comma, and then put your last one down, or just go comma, 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 and then the last item you'll say and then you add the last one, like here, it says and tacos. Now the red comma after hot dogs, that's called the Oxford comma. And that's distinguished from the American grammar. If you notice down below, it says, I like American fast food, comma, including pizza, comma, hot dogs, and tacos. That's called the American Associated Press version of grammar. They're the ones, I guess, who instigated it. But they don't put a comma after hot dogs. So with regards to your IELTS exam and your writing parts, I don't think it's a big deal Like it's not going to show up a grammar error, hopefully, but it's a point of contention when people have things remarked because you don't know if your examiner knows the difference, and he could be taking away a mark if he's British and he sees that you don't use a comma. Or if you put in a comma and he's an American and says, oh, what's that comma doing there? You don't know if they know the difference. They probably do, and it's probably not a big deal, but this is something you should know about. Finally, here are some grammar website recommendations. I've been offering these to my students for probably 15 years. On YouTube, you can go and search Anglo Links. The woman's name is Minu. She's probably has over 1 million hits in there easily, but she goes through a lot of grammar and explains it quite well. I can teach grammar as well, but I'd rather have you review it before you come see me. Anyways, the other page, number 2 there, English page, this is great for a place to practice, really. On Google, if you search the Purdue OWL Writing Lab, try and find their search engine and just type in anything there. There's lots of practice as well. The other one, the last one here, chompchomp.com, this is just more interactive fun. You can download their presentations, and they always do it in terms of a review and then a test. So they give you 10 test questions. These are just good places to practice and brush up on your grammar. That's all. Finally, here are some grammar website recommendations. I've been offering these to my students for probably 15 years. On YouTube, you can go and search Anglo Links. The woman's name is Minu. She's probably has over 1 million hits in there easily, but she goes through a lot of grammar and explains it quite well. I can teach grammar as well, but I'd rather have you review it before you come see me. Anyways, the other page, number 2 there, English page, this is great for a place to practice, really. On Google, if you search the Purdue OWL Writing Lab, try and find their search engine and just type in anything there. There's lots of practice as well. The other one, the last one here, chompchomp.com, this is just more interactive fun. You can download their presentations, and they always do it in terms of a review and then a test. So they give you 10 test questions. These are just good places to practice and brush up on your grammar. That's all. So here's the trick, or the tip that everybody loves to hear, but this is how you decide whether it's cause to effect or effect to cause, and you just usually have to concentrate on that first paragraph. When you are presented with a text, first you must decide if it moves from cause to effect or effect to cause. All you have to do here is just read the first few sentences of the first paragraph and ask yourself, what is the last thing that happened to the subject? In that first paragraph, the first 2 or 3 sentences, they're going to introduce the subject, obviously, and you're going to have to discover if they talk about the very last thing that happened to it or not. If you answer this question in the first paragraph, then that is the effect. That's basically what it is right there. If you can answer the last thing that happened to that subject, to your subject in that text, and then there's just going to be a list of causes that come after it. Likewise, if the effect is not there and they're not telling you the last thing that happened, then look at the subject of the first paragraph. It will probably be a little longer, like it's usually 2 or 3 words, and it's usually a major event, a product, or a topic, something that's very well known, such as music, the Industrial Revolution, or the 471 ice maker, which I just made up, but it'll have a title. It'll kind of sound like a title. This will inform you that this is the cause, okay? And the rest of the text that you're looking for, you're just going to be looking for effects, and they're very easily found, and then you just go into your procedure. You've discovered whether it goes from cause to effect or effect to cause. Now you write your compound sentence, and then follow it up with an adjective clause. So let's take a look at the next slide. So this example moves from cause to effect. And this is what I was referring to when you get the big title up front, like the French Revolution. That will be your cause. And then all the underlined parts that are highlighted in yellow, these are just effects. And so you have to gather these up and choose a couple, and you're going to make a compound sentence out of that. Okay? In an opposite direction, from effect to cause, this is what I was referring to. So you'll read that sentence and you'll come across, they won't tell you what depression is in this case. They'll tell you that it strikes teenagers alike, but it comes across as an effect, right? So the rest of the text, is just going to list causes for you all the way through. Likewise, you can answer that question. What's the last thing that happens to your topic? It's going to be depression strikes teenagers and young adults. And those are the people that it affects. And it can have far-reaching implications when young people suffer from emotional difficulties that they aren't sure how to manage. you just have depression as an effect, and then, like I said, the text is just going to list all the causes for this. Things to remember about cause and effect. You can have one cause and multiple effects, as with the previous slide, the French Revolution. So, for example, you can have a hurricane that hits a city, and it can cause flooding, electrical outages, and damage to buildings. Okay? One cause, the hurricane, multiple effects. Likewise, you can have one effect and multiple causes, as with depression on the previous slide. For example, a business closed due to an increase in rent, poor management, and the viral pandemic. Pearson never has multiple cause and multiple effect essays for this task, so you're only going to get it one cause, multiple effects, one effect, multiple causes. With the following examples, you should pause your screen or pause the video and give yourself a couple minutes to read through it. I've underlined some of the important parts, and then try and organize it yourself, put it into a compound sentence. I will give you an answer on the following slide. It'll be up there for 5 seconds. So pause and read, write your own answer, then check your answer against my answer. And we're going to do that 3 times. In conclusion, if you have the grammar parts down, if you know your compound sentences, noun clauses, maybe an adjective clauses, and you can find the pattern, this is a task that becomes extremely easy for you. Okay? Find the pattern, write the compound sentence, add an adjective clause. Maybe you're going to add a present participle or a participle phrase, anything you want to get it over 30 words. Remember, it just has to be grammatically correct because the algorithm's going to go after it. So that's why you really have to know your sentence structure and how to get your commas in the right places with these clauses. If you have any trouble with any of this, remember you can always purchase a book from Amazon that we've written. It uses the exact same procedure and it's really helpful. Best wishes for your test. You can follow MJG Education on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Tumblr. We'll be updating that constantly, as with our homepage. We specialize in tutorials for the time being as our website is being developed. So tutorials in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We also do lots of mock tests that include feedback, oral feedback, if we do them through Zoom. And of course, you'll get feedback in a written form as well. We like to emphasize too that we're a Canadian company. You can save 35% if you're dealing with companies that charge you in US dollars. By all means, come back and check us out. We'll save you a fortune. Anyways, thank you very much and have a nice day wherever you are. In the textbook PTE Writing, you can find at least 10 examples of cause to effect and effect to cause, if need be. It also has an extensive section of grammar and lots of essay examples as well.